Welcome back to Mind Your Own Business. We are here with our segment guest, Sherry Campbell. And so, Sherry, I know that you're here in Houston. You've been a realtor in Houston for a long time, like what, 15 years you were telling me?
Yes.
So,
Yep, been in the business here for 15 years.
which
And
means you've seen a lot of changes, a lot of different things. And Melanie, you were telling me some very cool things before we got started, but go ahead, why don't you
Well,
start?
I'm real interested to ask Sherry, because she's with Energy Corridor.
Energy Realty
Oh,
in the
I always
Energy
wondered.
Corridor, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that again. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
So Sherry, your real estate office is located where?
In the Energy Corridor,
Okay.
and it's called Energy Realty. So there's a reason for that.
All right. Well, tell us that reason.
Well, for me, it's kind of twofold. I always felt like we had a lot of energy. The agents that I hire have a lot of energy, and we're in the heart of the Energy Corridor. So the company needed to be called Energy Realty.
Awesome. Very
So-
good.
In fact, one of my colors is orange, so always have a touch of orange in everything I wear, almost.
Very good. Well, I know that not all of your area, obviously, because you work a lot of areas of Houston, but one of those areas is right there in the Memorial area, which was really struck hard when the dam was released, right, during the storm of Hurricane Harvey. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. In fact, Energy Corridor was hit, zip code 77077, 77079. We are right in the middle between two of the reservoirs. And so when they opened two reservoirs simultaneously, we were hit very hard with flooding. Some houses saw up to 12 feet of water.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's never seen anything like that.
So when we look at the real estate challenges, or the challenges of real estate, right? I mean, that was one that nobody could have ever predicted, correct?
No,
Just wasn't on anybody's radar.
not at all.
So tell us about, Michelle will work with you on the strategy part of what you did to put it together, but I do know that there's some stories from a mindset place that you truly had some very intimate, I guess we would say,
Yeah.
opportunities with people. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I live in the Energy Corridor and my office is in the Energy Corridor. So I have a rental property that flooded. That was one of the first properties hit. And then the office, it was funny, one of my agents lived across Eldridge Parkway, and he was actually watching the water rise.
Oh, wow.
And I was getting like minute by minute coverage of, okay, you're fine right now. And then, 10 minutes later he said, I think your office is flooded too. So everything, I mean, the city shut down. So it was really, nobody could do anything. At that point I knew I had two flooded houses. And then I found out that the house, my personal residence, also had flooded. So then there were three. And in the meantime, we also manage about 60 homes, and a lot of them are in the Energy Corridor. So these neighborhoods that were impacted, we had about 15 tenants that flooded as well. So landlords we were responsible for their properties. So, and for those first few days, it was, no one knew what to do because no one had experienced anything like that. We didn't know when the water was going to recede.
I guess in those moments, can you imagine what it feels like to be responsible for so many people and their properties and their homes and their emotional state, plus your own going on right
Yeah.
at the very same time. So Sherry, share with me, or share with us a little bit about the experiences that you had with people who said, that's it, we're out of here, and people that said, we're going to rebuild. What was that like? As you muddled through it with your own life.
So
Yeah.
so I'll quickly tell you that one of the first things I had to do, and then I can kind of say how we were able to come in and help people out, is I had to say, okay, we can't open an office, everybody's working out of their house, but then learn shortly that I have to set up a temporary office because there was nowhere for anyone to go. So one of my agents that didn't flood let us office out of her house. So
Wow.
we did that, and I had my staff there, and then we started we obviously were getting phone calls from people that they, what do they do? We don't know when you're going to be able to get back into the house. Some of our landlords lived in other countries, so they weren't even here, so we were giving instructions that way. But the mindset was horrible. because people were devastated. And you know, there was so much emotion during that time, but there was also a lot of good emotion because, I mean, like with any catastrophe, the community tends to stand together,
Right.
and they really try to help each other out. I mean, it's very touching when you go, and even the renters, when everybody was able to leave the house and they lost everything on the first floor. And you know, these are people that have traveled the world and collected valuable pieces of art and furniture, and you know, they were just so open and caring about it, where they would make comments about, well, we really feel bad for the landlord that they lost this house, and so we're so sorry. And so we could say we're sorry for your loss as well. So I think it really helped that the community bonded together during that time. So I mean, I think I was so busy I didn't really have time to think about what my loss was. So it was just, how do you keep going?
Yeah.
Right.
I think you shared with me about one specific
Yeah.
family, and I think that our audience would really appreciate hearing this story.
Yeah, that I did. It's a sweet story. So a lot of the people that lost homes were elderly, and there's one couple in particular that's always been very dear to my heart, and they lived in my neighborhood. They were in their 80s. They had a house that was about 5,000 square foot, and initially they thought, there's just no way we're going to come back and rebuild this. We don't need this big a space. We're not going to furnish it. So initially they moved to Montrose and stayed in one of their son's homes, and we were going to try to sell it for some crazy price, flooded, which a lot of the homes did. But then after some time, they said, you know what, we love it here. We really, this is our home. And this couple would come back, the house was completely flooded, gutted downstairs, and they would just sit in their backyard by their pool. And sometimes I'd drive through the neighborhood and I'd see them and I'd chat with them. And one day they said, Sherry, come join us for a glass of wine at our house. And the house was still like gutted. And so I said, okay. And so I went to the house, and upstairs, you still had the upstairs. They had a little card table set up. They had their little burner, and they're vegetarian, so they're cooking little veggie patties. So they cooked me a veggie patty, poured me a glass of wine, and I'm sitting there chatting. They said, yeah, we think we've decided to rebuild. And I asked them, I said, because I've talked to so many people that literally were like, I don't ever want to see this house again. I never want to go back into the community. I have too many bad memories about this. And so I asked this couple, I said, so are you still devastated from all of this? And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? And he goes, this is like, why would we be devastated? We lived through 2 wars. This is nothing.
Yeah, you have to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, everything is about perspective, and it, with everything that I'd heard and what they went through, it suddenly dawned on me that that's the difference with our age group or today. Even myself, in my early 50s, I haven't ever experienced anything as devastating as a war. So this is as big as a catastrophe as most of us have experienced, except for if you have gone through a war. So really, it had a big impact on me, and I thought that really puts it into perspective.
Well, you did an awesome thing to just start your business right back up immediately in the home of one of your agents. So what other strategy things did you do to turn it around? And
so, do you want to
Actually,
ask me?
Go ahead and answer that question, and then I have some questions.
Why? And I remember specifically one agent saying, and she just started in the business, and she said, Sherry, I was just starting and things were starting to go well, and now what do I do? And what I told her is, I said, go out and talk to people. People bring them cookies, just be there for them. And I said, and I promise you, it'll come back around in some way. But that's really all I could say, because no one was thinking about, immediately you're not thinking when I'm going to buy a house, but they were, right? And I said, don't make it about how I'm going to have business, but make it about how can we help you at this time. And that's really what we tried to do at that time. It really wasn't about, we are in a business of helping people in their homes, and this is a time when people need us more than ever, and that's what we were going to do.
Yeah,
that's really what we did.
Very good. I want to engage the audience with this in this section as well, because I know a lot of you, or actually almost everybody in this room, went through this with Harvey, right? And how that was affected. So curious, just jump forward to today for me, do you feel like it's back to where you were before? Are things normal? What you would consider?
Well, the community has struggled coming back as far as values and home sales. I think initially we dealt with people that had to get into temporary housing, or they made the decision, let me go buy somewhere else, whether they bought in Montrose and they just
Right.
got the heck out of an area that flooded. And then we sold a lot of flood properties, but I think any realtor out there today that sells in those zip codes, they know that our values were impacted. There's still a big mindset of people that are very much afraid of, oh, I don't want to buy anything that flooded. And I'd say I'm probably talking about 50% of buyers are still hesitant to buy in these areas. That market hasn't come back 100%. But you know, I actually did a video, and I had a videographer go in a year later to really capture the silver lining behind the flood is these homes were dated.
Yes.
And needed to be updated a lot. And we did it, it was a forced update,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, we were able to update in ways that we never would have. Like one of my homes, I completely opened up the space, tore down walls, and really made it look like a modern house, which I wouldn't have done that. If
Right.
like someone's living there, I would have kept a closed floor plan. So, you know, that's one of the things that we hopefully encourage people to do. Hey, this is your opportunity really to transform your home, and the values are going to come back.
Very good, because that's actually a really great point, is that when, when what feels devastating, when we can look at it as opportunity, how do we do our business differently, right? How do we come back and take the risk and change the things that maybe we were a little too scared to change? Whether it's the floor plan of a house, or the fact that maybe you were a broker and you had 10 agents under you and 3 of those agents were slacking and you weren't doing anything about it. Well, guess what? The flood probably just got rid of them, right? And took that right out of your pocket. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I will say, I learned a lot from my dad growing up, and he always said that disasters came to weed out the weak, okay? And so it's those of us who look at what's the opportunity, how does it look different? So very good, and congratulations on
Thank you.
Really, I'm hearing a strong mindset in it
Yeah.
for you, and I'm just feeling like there's some different opportunities that you decided to choose and take.
Yeah.
Now that we're several years down the road. So does anybody in the audience want to talk about maybe how it affected you, how it affected your business, anything you would want to throw in? I want to give you that opportunity real quick. Yep, let's give you the mic. I'm just going to share this mic. Thank you.
MYOB is Mike Pastor.
Hi, I'm Amber Griffin with Coldwell Banker United Realtors, and I live in the Energy Corridor as well. We had a townhome that was nearly flooded. I mean, it was like a foot from the doorstep. We live on an island in Parkway Villages, so we were just kind of in a niche that was blessed by not being affected, if you will. But in my business, after the flood had happened, it was really difficult to find value around those areas. So once we got bounced back a little bit in the market as time progressed, it was hard to comp the houses. And I'm just curious, did your office experience that same kind of issues, comping flooded houses versus not flooded houses versus what the market was before?
Great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Do I take the microphone back?
We're going to let you have the microphone back, and then we'll put it back in the audience.
So even today, we're having a hard time, but I think the big difference is we couldn't differentiate the flood homes versus non-flood homes, right? On HAR, they took that away. And then all the people that didn't flood said, oh, my house is worth so much more money now because we didn't flood. What they didn't realize, by not being able to separate that, the entire area really was impacted because of zip code. The only way people could really separate that was this zip code flooded, that one did not. So you still today, we're kind of seeing that the flood houses probably lost about 10 to 15% in value. I don't know if other realtors are seeing that as well. Mm-hmm. So you've got to kind of almost factor that in. You have to, and as realtors, we have to go in and look at each one. Now, if we're in the area, we know Parkway Villages did not flood, right? So we can say Fleetwood flooded, right? So we can kind of, but then you could go Briar Hills, some of it flooded, but some of it didn't. So it's really knowing, and our industry, we have 30,000 realtors, so who knows which one's flooded and which one's, so we really kind of have to help guide people around. I had another kind of silly story. It's not really silly, but I had a house for sale in Nottingham that didn't flood. And I put up a do not flood rider, did not flood rider on the sign. And the neighbor called me and she was upset. And she said, that is so insensitive of you to do that. And I said, ma'am, I am so sorry. I totally sympathize with you. I flooded myself. But my job is to represent my client. And I have to get that message out there because people don't know. So yeah, so it's like we're not being insensitive, but we have to identify which homes didn't flood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though their value is impact,
Yeah.
right? It's still gonna be
Yeah.
impact, but at least the buyer would have the differentiation that the house didn't flood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though the seller is being impacted by that 10%.
Yeah, because I think like in the beginning, I don't know if everybody else heard it, but like there were 80% of buyers said, oh, I don't want to go near anything. I mean, you're not talking about a foot of water or 6 inches of water in a house. You're talking in a lot of these homes, they had an average of 3 to 4 feet of water in the house, and it sat there for 2 weeks. So it's kind of, and then you have all the images on TV of people in boats and people being rescued out of houses. It's, you know, that's not going to go away quickly.
Yeah. From a mindset perspective, where have you guys, like, do you feel like you're beyond? I heard a lot in the beginning about, like, even what you were just saying, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to buy those houses. How am I ever going to do this again? This area isn't going to be good. Do you guys feel like you have moved beyond? Is it building again? Do you have anything there that we need to work on from a mindset perspective?
Jane's back there, she's got,
Yeah,
and she
Jane.
flooded, so I know she's got some.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Jane Caldwell with Cool Banker United Realtors. And yes, I know Sherry very well. I live in the same area she does and work the energy corridor also in the Memorial area. I did flood, so we've all been through that personal crises. But the thing that I think is important for us, and one of the best things that happened for us is change our seller's disclosure, which now they have to give so much more information on if they did flood with Harvey. And that's very helpful, I think, as realtors, because it's not showing on MLS that they flooded, but we can flip up and see the attachments, and we can look at the seller's disclosure and be able to tell our buyers that it did flood. However, I think it's our responsibility also to educate them that if the home has been remediated properly, and if it has certificates of the remediation and mold certificates, they can feel comfortable buying a home like that. Unfortunately, I think their mindset still is, it's going to be cheaper. I can make a lower offer. But these homes, as Sherry mentioned, have been updated to the point that they look great. And our homes that have not flooded, that haven't been updated, they're the ones that are struggling, that we struggle selling, because they don't look like the updated ones that did flood. So it's kind of a mixed situation that we're dealing with right now, but I think we are overcoming it. I think one of the things that hurt us in the energy corridor is the companies also flooded that had the employees that were buying our properties.
Right.
And they're not now giving them the same packages that they did originally. But I think that's all going to change within the next year or so. I mean, I think Houston's good. We're a fabulous city, and everybody needs to come and live here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really want to hoorah you on that, because one of the things I was going to ask you, so great, all of that occurred, and how are we addressing the flip side of the mindset, right? So I think you are addressing that with the way you're marketing to your clients and letting them know, like, it was done properly. Here we can prove it was done properly.
Well, and another thing, I mean, I actually had sold a townhouse or a condo right after the flood.
Right.
And this young couple wanted it so bad, but I could smell it. And if you've lived in that flood situation, you know that smell of that mold. And I insisted, even though they had a mold certificate, the seller supposedly had this done, and it was, the HOA did it. So the HOA that was responsible for remediating some of the homes, they provided these certificates. But they were done so early. And I don't think the homes were left open long enough and dried out. Well, anyway, I could smell it. So I said, you've got to have a mold mold inspection done, and they did, and the levels were really high. So because of a young child, they had a baby, I said, you can't bring this child. So I talked him out of the sale.
Hey,
But
that's a sign
it
of a
was
great
for the
realtor,
safety
right?
of the child, and I sold them another property
Right.
that didn't flood. So, I think it's our responsibility and fiduciary responsibility to our buyers or our sellers to make sure they have done the correct inspections. And even with our sellers, that some of them had their homes remediated, they weren't done correctly. Because we had a lot of
Yeah.
people that came in that didn't know what they were doing.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, give her a hand. I have a question.
Great, and then we're gonna go to break.
Okay, then we're gonna go to break. Oh, it'll take longer for Nan, so we'll pick up the question in a bit.
Okay, well,
Thank
we
you.
will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
being
for having me
here
on
with
here.
us today.
Yes,
And,
it was great. Thanks.
yep, so we're gonna go to break, guys. We will see you when we get back, and we'll be talking to Amber Griffin in the next segment. Yay!